Hey everybody, welcome back to the Pixelists podcast, the podcast about all the nerdy things we love and enjoy. As always, we're your hosts. I'm Will. That's Blake. I pointed the right way the first time. And today we're here to talk some Critical Role. Um, a big episode, honestly. Back with Team AOL.
Huge episode.
Very excited to dive into this one. But as always, before we do, couple of quick announcements. We've got our recurring series going on Worlds Beyond Number. Be sure to check that out if you haven't. We are covering the Ravening War, which episode 3 just aired.
Heard from a reliable source that it was a pretty good one.
It was a pretty good one. I've seen it.
It was you. You're the one who told me it was good.
Which we won't dive into it now, obviously, but yeah, some stuff to talk about there. And tonight, actually, we have the premiere of Candela Obscura, the new show, the new series from Critical Role that will be premiering on the off week, the last Thursday of each month. At least that's my assumption for the foreseeable future. So that starts tonight. They already put out a YouTube quick start guide for those of you who are interested that kind of quickly explains the rules and the rules and kind of the roles and kind of a little bit of the flavor of the game.
Yeah,
Have you
think
watched
of it,
it yet?
way? Yeah, I did.
I thought it sounded really cool.
Yeah, there's without getting like in the weeds, just like an extremely high level for our players or our viewers. There's this kind of interesting dynamic of adding dice to your rolls to make it more successful, basically, or the odds more successful, or choosing to take a worse roll so that you can add dice back to like your storage of dice you can use later. I know I just butchered that explanation, but I think that kind of nuance, that kind of technical play is pretty interesting coming from D&D, where everything you aim to do, you always want to be successful in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's kind of an interesting, strategy involved with it.
Yeah, I think it sounds really cool, and especially a cool element. In any setting, obviously, but I think it's almost a little bit even cooler in like this horror setting of like, I could choose to do worse here. I think it will make for some really interesting, like character driven moments. And the whole like scar system seems pretty cool too, which I don't want to dive into it here. We'll probably talk about it. We're going to be covering that show as well, so we'll probably talk more about like the rules and stuff in our episode 1 discussion of that. So be looking forward to that for those of you that are going to be checking it out. And as always, we also have a Discord. It'll be linked down in the description below. We come there just to theory craft, chat, what have you, but we also typically do like live chat watch-alongs for the content, which we do every Thursday for Critical Role. And so we are going to be doing that tonight as well for Candela Obscura. So for those of you checking it out, hop on in and join us. Should be fun.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I think that is all, my friend. This is like not really an announcement, but Diablo 4 releases in 7 days. So my friend and I,
weekend, man.
Yeah, we're gonna be playing and enjoying it. And if you like Blizzard games, we're not gonna have a channel for it in the Discord, but we might chat about it a little bit in the Discord. So don't be a stranger. We do have Hearthstone in the Discord, which is a labor of pain from Will, but there's some, even if you're not a critter, there's some stuff available there for you if you want to engage. So that's my last announcement, I guess.
Yeah, we've got you can talk about anything you want in the Discord. We don't necessarily have a channel for everything, but there's a place for it. We can always make a new one. So yeah, I knew it was coming out, but I didn't realize we were a week away.
Yeah.
I'm excited. Yeah, so for any of y'all that are going to be playing, let us know in the comments. Maybe we can group up or something.
Yeah, that'd be really fun, actually.
All right.
Okay.
Well, without further ado, I'm sure most of you know the drill by now, but we are going to dive into our recap of the episode before we discuss it. And we host that recap by itself separately. So if you're listening to the recap video right now and you want to hear our full thoughts, that video will be linked in the description below. But my friend, if you would like to take us off today.
Yes. So, just disclaimer: a lot happens in this episode. This is episode 59, somewhere out there, and like Will mentioned, this is the return to Team AOL. Picking up where we left off in the previous episode, where a teleportation spell. Seemingly, we don't know what ended up with the other party, but we are back immediately after the beginning of the Apogee Solstice, like I mentioned, with Team AOL, and they find themselves in this geyser-like, crater-like gorge of sorts. And similar to what we saw with the other group, the immediate reaction is, where is everybody? Like, I can't, like, where's Chetney? Where's FCG? Where's Fern? Where's Imogen? Laudna is worried that something might have happened to Imogen. And again, like we saw with the other group, they immediately start sending out sending spells that fizzle and go nowhere. We see Orem is going to try to use his sending stone to connect with Dorian, and it doesn't work. And also, a message is sent to Caleb Widowgast, and again, it doesn't seem to work. So nothing new. We've become familiar from the previous episodes that because of this Apogee Solstice, that certain magics aren't working, and the party essentially not knowing where they are. There is a history check from Laudna where they surmise they might be in one of three locations, but ultimately decide they need higher ground to figure out kind of where they are, what's happening. It's the middle of the night. They do see Ruidus in the distance, and Orem begins to wonder if possibly they're on another continent. So, as they climb the gorge, they're avoiding these exploding geysers and also a clicking sound of some sort of creature in the darkness that they're very much keen not to run into. They make it to this ledge towards the top of the gorge of this crater, and we meet one of our first guest characters. We have Amy Carrero, who rejoins the table as a new character.
Ooh.
Mona, who we come to find out later, her name is Denise. She is I just think of like the dwarven version of Ashton, because there was like the tattoo that
Yeah.
instead of like "I love mom," it was just me. And it's this dwarven woman who immediately is like, "Who are you? What's going on? You guys look really bad, by the way. You look like you've been beat up." And they're kind of like, "Well, who are you? What's going on? Like, how did you get here?" And they all very much realize they have a similar story in that they just like it's almost like they blinked and they were here. Mona tells a story about she was looking at her fiance like from a distance, was like, "Hey," and then heard a voice, which we know is, excuse me, Ludinus's voice, and then she was suddenly here. She doesn't know why. She offers some liquor to the group, and they're like, "Yeah," after what we've been through. And they continue to climb this crater, essentially talking about, who they are. Orm sort of giving Mona the down low, and also asks, like, "Is Mona your real name?" Because Mona, there's this moment where they're like, "So what is your name?" And she's like, Mona," kind of like a very "I'm Ron Burgundy"-esque way. Laudna is going to send out Pate to go to the bottom of the gorge, and then also just use Pate as sort of a scouter. But not much is figured out there. And they eventually make their way out of the crater into this amazing lush forest that is nearby. Among this forest, or I should say rather in the distance, is a series of mountains, one in particular that rises above all the others. It's this magnificently large mountain peak. And Orm tries to do a history check to kind of clock what it might be, and has a poor roll and is unable to remember what it could be from his background. But in the distance, sort of the edge of the forest landscape, they see some flickering lights, which I think might be a town, and they decide to maybe head that direction. But along the way, Mona sees in the distance a small ruddy campfire, which they decide to sneak up on, and we have another guest who comes to the table, Utkarsh and Bootkar. I think I said it right. I'm not sure if I did. I apologize if I didn't. But he joins the table as Bordor Dogson, a sheep herder. And in fact, as the group's coming up, he claims to be a sheep herder. I just tend to my flock. My dad's a sheep herder. But as the party's coming up, he reactively, in surprise, is going to cast a level 5 like lightning bolt or some kind of big attack. And Mona with a nat 20 takes half damage, but still takes 23 points of damage. And it's kind of like a sort of Mexican standoff, like what's going on here? And Border is very much skittish, and I have no idea what's going on. Please don't hurt me. He has his caravan of basically he explains that he was traveling all the way in Wildmount. His brother's been sick. His brother's had a fever for 3 weeks. He was bringing supplies. Again, heard this voice in his head, and boom, basically opened his eyes here. And interestingly enough, doesn't know magic, doesn't know how he got his magic, just suddenly is able to use it. And then also, they basically decided to like make camp for the night. There is also Ratchet. Was that like the deer or like some animal he had?
Yeah,
Or
they kept like basically calling it a reindeer.
yeah. So he has a reindeer. There's that
Yeah.
named Ratchet, and they basically decided to make camp. There is this funny moment where they're like, well, do we have any food? And Ashton's like, oh yeah, I'll jump into the hole and get some food. And they forget that a bunch of the mercenaries from their attack at the dig site where the Apogee Solstice was happening, a bunch of dead mercenaries are in the hole. And so they start pulling out bodies, which Bordor immediately is like, are you guys bad
Who are you
people?
people? Yeah.
Yeah. He's like, I promise. And Orm gives like a very genuine, very dad-esque, like, hey, we were doing something epic. These are the bad guys. We're the good guys. All this to say, there is another noise coming out from the woods, and we have our third guest character, Emily Axford, who joins the table as Prism. This, and I'm probably butchering it, but basically, I thought of kind of like a goth-styled elf. I think from the Shadowfell.
Yeah, she kept saying the Shadow Realm, but presumably the
Okay.
Shadowfell.
Okay, yeah. And very fun character. Immediately comes in with like this clipboard and is like, excuse me, can I get I'm here to collect your thoughts on the Apogee Solstice. And she is with the Cobalt Soul, and apparently is sort of like this junior mage or assistant mage of some kind who has been sent off to gather feedback from the denizens of Exandria on their thoughts of the Apogee Solstice. Ashton's like, it sucks. I give it like a 1 star. Not good. And Prism has also a spell book named Dinios, I think.
I think so, yeah.
Was a former mage turned into a book and gifted to her as an assistant. And basically she gives more of a background, and in fact, in asking, sort of collecting this data, we do find out from Mona that Mona's real name is actually Denise, with a $sign as the S. And yeah, I think that's it. I think we break there before we come back to some more things that happen. Am I forgetting any other details?
No, just basically that the break happens basically right as this combat encounter is going to happen.
Right.
They hear something like in the woods, and so they're like, "Oh, another person,"
yeah.
because they're all like all these people showing up, but in fact it's like this creature.
Right.
And that's where we go to break. And so good job, by the way, on the first half. We pick back up, and basically combat is beginning. We're rolling initiative, but there is this really funny moment where as like everyone's doing their last action preparing for this combat encounter, Laudna is like, I take my form of dread, all the tree roots come out, and she contorts her neck, and it's like I climb backwards up the tree. And she does this right next to Bordor, who just like starts vomiting. He's so scared. It was really funny. So basically
this reminded me of other things from this combat that he does, but I won't spoil it.
So basically this combat encounter is versus these corpse flowers and I didn't write the exact monster down, but I want to say shambling mound, some sort of mound. My apologies for not having it exactly. So people are rolling initiative. Prism immediately casts greater invisibility on herself and manifests mind on Dinios. Um, and also sends her raven, which she has, into combat to join Dinios, and her raven's name is Mother. Um, Again,
Yeah.
Bordor is screaming and vomiting, um, but everyone rolls initiative, and for combat, you know the drill. We're just going to hit the highlights here. Um, but as everyone's attacking, they quickly realize that this creature is resistant to fire, which is a bit counterintuitive to what they expected, being like this plant monster.
Hmm.
We do see Ashton utilize their belt of momentum, which they got recently, or it's been so weird with the group splitting up. Maybe it
Right.
wasn't recently, but that gives them an extra d6 of damage due to like running up before a strike. So it was cool to see them use that. Um, and as this thing is taking damage, this mound, it's like shifting its shape and starts to take like a humanoid form at one point, and then that's when these corpse flower entities are also joining in on the fray. Prism, who again is invisible, is just casting spells from up in the trees through Dinios. Um, and this is her first, like, this is Emily Axford's like first, like real action as part of Critical Role. And she casts Steel Wind Strike and gets two natural 20s and a 26 on the damage rolls. So it's just
Yeah.
like immediate, just carnage. Uh, so that was awesome. Bordor is terrified and is just struggling this fight, going so far as to just literally lie prone because he's
Yeah.
so scared, to make himself a smaller target.
Everyone else was like,
Meanwhile,
"Are you sure you lie down prone in the combat?" He's like,
like,
"Oh yeah."
yeah, yeah. Meanwhile, we have Denise, who is this really cool bard, or not bard, excuse me, barbarian rogue, multi-class, just going in and doing like crazy damage, sneak attack as a barbarian. It's really cool. So she and Ashton are kind of like taking turns, like pummeling it. Um, Combat continues, and as it does, one of the corpse flowers, which is named such because it literally has like bodies inside of it. At one point, it's taking so much damage that it consumes one of the bodies inside of it to heal. So really cool encounter. Ultimately, Denise gets the "How do you want to do this?" on one of the plants, or excuse me, the final "How do you want to do this?" There's a few of them. The only other big thing in the combat is Orem gets eaten by the plant at one point, and Emily Axford immediately comes in with sending Dinios inside the plant and casting Dimension Door through it to get them just
Yeah.
both back out. Um, in the aftermath of the combat, they decide to set up camp and have a little bit more of discussions. Prism reveals that her raven mother is not actually her mother, but is named after the matron of ravens, who she says, people are all about in the Shadow Realm. Um, During the combat, the reindeer like ran away scared, so Laudna sends Pate to go out and scout and see if he can find it. And a lot of discussions here are happening. Where should they set up camp? What exactly should they do? And they basically come up with this plan to use the corpses that they had in the portable hole to set up as like a decoy camp in case there's any more monsters or anything out, that maybe that will get like their attention instead of their actual camp. So they set that up, and then they go head off and kind of find this nearby cave to actually sleep in. And once they're in there, the members of Bell's Hells basically catch up all of these new people on just what's been happening with them, with Ruidus, with the Apogee Solstice, and how this teleportation thing happened. They're basically just getting everyone up to speed on what's going on. And Bordor then says, "Hey, like what I'm trying to do is get to Pride's Call in Wild Mount." And like he pulls out this like thing in his coat that he had that he said his dad wrote for him, which were like directions or like a reminder of where he's supposed to be going. And he's like, I don't know what's going on or who any of you people are, but like you seem to know what you're doing, so like, can I come with you? And at that point, they basically decide to take the night's rest and have their different watches. So first up for watch, we have Bordor and Prism, who basically just make small talk about what they think about the gods after they, have been filled in by Team AOL. Like,
Mm.
should we get rid of the gods? Like, what do you think about this? And um, Border, or excuse me, Prism is like, your newfound magical powers like might be from a god. And he's like, yeah, I haven't even thought about that. And he reveals that he hasn't seen his mother in a very long time and doesn't really remember her that well. For next up watch, we have Ashton and Laudna, and this is just classic, awesome RP moments between these two. where Ashton is just checking in on Laudna with how she's doing, especially being separated from Imogen. And she's just compartmentalizing hard so that she doesn't break. And Ashton's like, you know what, you don't have to. Like, you can talk to me. And she says, well, if I don't, like, I'm just gonna break and cry. And he comforts her and says, no matter what, we're gonna get them back, whatever it
Hmm.
takes. Like, you don't leave
Yeah.
anyone behind. Finally, we have Denise and Orem on the third watch, and Denise reveals a little bit about herself, saying that she got this box item from Gilmore, the same Gilmore that Orem is familiar with. And she then reveals that her ex that she's been referring to this whole episode is none other than Dariax, the very same Dariax that Orem, was a member of the Crown Keepers with. And so they have this realization, and he's like, "Oh my gosh!" And she's like, "Oh, yeah, I've seen your poster everywhere. You're wanted by the Nameless Ones." And he's like, what?" um, and she says, "Yeah, like Dariax and I were pre-engaged, and we'd been stealing furs. And one day he just left. Then these fur collectors came, so I had to leave. And I've just been tracking him down for months. When I finally found him, and just before getting my hands on him, is when I got teleported here." And that's the gist of their kind of conversations before we have dawn and the night is over and they wake everyone else up. So they said, okay, let's start traveling to the nearest point of civilization that we can find. And as they're going, they now do recognize some of the geography around them. They realize that the mountain to the north of them is the Ascendant Bridge Mountain, which is known to be the tallest in the world. And because of that and another mountain range, which they recognize to be the Sunder Peak mountain range, they realize that they are in Asilra. And as Blake mentioned, they can still see Ruidus kind of far away, but locked in place. And also, Pate returns. I forgot to mention that. He was unable to find the reindeer. And Border's like, it's not a big deal. We weren't that attached. Um, and so Prism's like, well, hey, I have this spell called Find Greater Steed. Like, we can use it to get the reindeer back. And he's like, don't worry about it. Maybe another time. So they're like, okay. And the group decides, all right, well, let's still head to the nearest city. And that's where the episode ends. Once again, this was episode 59, Somewhere Out There, of Critical Role Campaign 3. And as always, if you want to hear our full discussion, be sure to check the link down in the description below.
What a gift of an episode this was. This was a fun one for sure.
It really was. I, it's always fun to see new faces at the table.
Yeah. And Utkarsh, his has he played D&D before? Because it seemed very green, which I thought it was very wholesome, like him like kind of learning, but then I read some like comment that he had played before or something, or
there's
I
a
was a little
whole
lost.
there's a whole conversation to be had about this, but I think he is new, but he has played before because I hadn't seen it, but apparently like Matt had DM'd for him and some other people before. I don't know if it was for like some event or something, but I heard people talking about that. So he's
Okay.
still like, so maybe he's played twice ever for all I know, but at the very least, this wasn't his first time ever playing. He's at least played
Yeah, okay.
before.
Well, it was fun seeing him kind of expose himself to D&D. That's a weird phrase. Refamiliarize himself with it.
Yeah,
That was fun. I thought Amy, it was so great having her back at the table. Totally threw me to
me
have her
too.
as a different character.
Me too.
And then Emily Axford. Oh my gosh, this person is so freaking funny. Maybe my new favorite character. So
this
yeah,
week's flavor of the month, or
yeah.
this
Three
week's.
really fun guest characters. Great energy at the table. Like there's something very just fun about this group. And I mean, I was locked in. I'm very interested to see where this goes for sure.
Yeah, great up. Obviously everyone has missed Team AOL, so it was just great to see those faces at the table again. And then of course, yeah, all the guests were great. Um, we basically are already doing it, but loved the ep. I know you did too. Um, a lot of fun things to talk about. which let's just start with the guests like we kind of already are. Obviously, we have Amy back, which is a treat, and especially I mean, there's no really point waxing poetic on this, but obviously it would have been awesome if it was Opal, and therefore,
Mhm.
maybe it was Dorian, maybe we got the Crown
Right.
Keepers. But so I'm not saying that wouldn't have been cool, but it's almost so cool that she's playing a completely different character. I think she's the first, or I'm pretty confident in saying that she's the first guest that's ever played two
Mhm.
separate characters in the same canon. Um,
Yeah. Okay. It was kind of cool also having her at the table, not as the new person, I guess.
yeah,
Which I guess I'm not. I guess what I'm kind of trying to say is, um, she definitely. I felt like compared to season one of Exandria, had a lot more confidence, or very much like I was like, yeah, she. I don't even know what I'm trying to say. Honestly, I think it's cool just seeing her, knowing. I don't know, getting to play D&D with the group again. I guess.
yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad that she was back, and I don't want to get into this right now, but especially because of some of the like toxicity that came during the first EXU, which a lot of it was directed at her and Abria. So I'm very glad that for whatever reason that didn't leave like a sour taste in her mouth, where she was like, okay, like, I loved the experience, I love you guys, but I can't handle like this.
Hmm.
Well, that didn't even happen, so I don't even want to waste time talking about it. But yes, so glad that she came back. Um, and so cool. Go ahead.
Or sorry, I was just say I do feel bad for Abria though because Abria is so freaking amazing, and uh, there was some criticism with EXU, and then people. I think if you flipped the arcs and Abria and Christian's arc came second, there would be kind of a similar fanfare of like, oh, we get the other group now. So I just feel bad that two of the three times she's been on a Critical Role show that I feel like she's been a bit unfairly, fairly and unfairly criticized. Then again, her third one is Calamity, which is, you know, amazing. But just echoing your comment of, yeah, it's nice to have Amy back and another kind of go at it.
Yeah. And I didn't I don't I won't touch on that. We'll just we'll just
Yeah,
keep it
yeah,
moving. But yeah,
sure.
Abria is freaking amazing and doesn't deserve any of the hate. I wasn't seeing too much of it this time around for her
No,
personally, aside from
no,
just
yeah,
people in general being like, when are we getting the other group?
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah, right.
but and just cool, again, like I already said, that she's playing a new character, but so cool that it's one still kind of deeply ingrained with like Dariax and these story threads that were already happening, and it just makes me so curious about like behind the scenes the conversations she had with Matt, which
Yeah,
obviously as the DM but also Dariax. um I'm just really curious like how they came together for this, because for those of you
yeah,
that aren't aware, obviously Dariax is from EXU. But more than that, during the pandemic, when they had kind of paused production on the show, they launched this side content called Narrative Telephone, which they were able to do like from each of their homes safely. And um, because of that, we eventually got a Narrative Telephone episode where Amy guested, and she kind of fleshed out this character of Denise, kind of as just like a joke in this Narrative Telephone episode. But now, like, that character is canon, and it's like the character, it's the same version of Denise she's playing here. So if you haven't,
yeah. I need to go back and watch that.
yeah, definitely go check that out if you guys haven't. It's just a, it's just a good fun time, good concept.
Yeah,
But yeah, so I'm just curious about. Okay, well, actually, I'm gonna pause there and talk about the other two guests before we dive into like specifics on the episode. Utkarsh, I think is great. I know a lot of people recognized him from the movie Pitch Perfect, which I've seen, but he didn't ping for me immediately.
never
But
saw it.
I know he also has a show called Ghosts that I think's on right now. Also haven't seen it.
Mhm.
But he's hilarious.
Yeah, it was really fun.
I love the character he's playing, which again, I want to have a deeper discussion on
Yeah,
like what is him being genuinely new versus perhaps role
Right.
play.
Right.
Um, and then Emily Axford. Blake and I are we haven't really seen D20. We're watching The Ravening War right now, but that's our kind of first experience with D20. So we weren't familiar with Emily Axford, but that is a name I have heard over and over and over for the past couple of years. Just hearing about like her accolades and the legend of uh, Emily and how she like just terrorizes GMs, but like in a good way. And I've seen a couple of clips of like Brennan reacting, and obviously I don't have the full context, but it's just so cool to actually see her on Critical Role. I know this was a lot of people's like dream guest to show up. And at the start of the episode, they announced the Zelda one shot, which she was going to be a part of. So I know, like in the Discord, a lot of people were like, "Oh my gosh, we finally get Emily Axford at CR." And then so when she actually walked in to be part of
Yeah.
the main campaign, everyone was freaking out. Um, and even in just this short sample size
Yeah.
we have of her, like I get it. Like she's a fantastic actress, and also is so like quick and
Witty.
strategic with
Extremely witty.
yeah with not only like character moments but like with combat as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited to see kind of more of her.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about her. I didn't know any of I didn't know her reputation preceded her. I
Yeah.
definitely see why though. She was amazing from the moment she came on to the came to the table. Very funny, very witty. Um, yeah, I'm really excited. And then also her conversation with Bordor. I mean, the two of them not main characters, and then over the campfire during their watch, just kind of a nice little deeper moment. I just thought that was kind of cool too. Like here's two guest characters who are
Yeah.
already sort of like confidently, just having this
Yeah.
conversation. I just thought that was cool.
Just
So
immediately kind of thrust into the spotlight.
yeah,
um yeah, same here.
but
So yeah, I'm excited to see where this goes. I'm curious if we're going to get a similar length of time with them as we did with
mhm,
the former group. That would be like roughly my expectation, but I guess
yeah.
especially since it's the second and final one, really anything could be on the table.
So we got 7 episodes from the previous group, right? So we've had one,
Something like that.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it could be coming back in mid to late July, if that's a similar timeline, I guess.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I'm excited to see where this goes. I'm excited for Candela Obscura tonight,
me too.
but I was bummed we only got one little taste before we went to a break
Yeah.
from them. Um, but yeah, maybe let's start like big picture from this episode. Um, so we know they're in Asilra.
Hmm.
We know seemingly ported away like the other group. Same issues with like sending spells and what have you. We got a couple of new details. I don't know if we got the detail of other people hearing Ludinus's voice.
Yeah, and other people being randomly teleported.
Right. And not just teleported from the site, but being
Right.
teleported. Bordor was all the way in Wildmount and got teleported across the world, basically. What's going on there? Are these Rudisborn? Like, is it possible the other group just didn't happen to run into another Rudisborn? I mean, what's happening?
I don't know. This was one of my biggest questions for what was going on because, yeah, it's very strange. Rudisborn was one of my first thoughts too. It would at least make sense. Maybe those types of people were affected differently. One interesting potential piece of information is that it seems like Prism was teleporting anyway. Like
Right.
she was teleporting because of the Cobalt Soul to go like do
Right.
this survey.
Right.
And so maybe in her case, she just happened to be teleporting at like the same time the solstice was going on. And so the
Yeah.
haywiredness of magic
Right. Right.
plopped her out here instead of where she was trying to go.
Right.
So maybe something similar happened with Bordor, and he's just kind of so oblivious that, like, either he didn't, maybe nobody asked him, so maybe he didn't mention that, or just, I don't know why he would have been teleporting. But it's at least possible that something like that went on. But he was with the whole carriage and the reindeer and thing, so I don't really know if that answer makes sense or not. So aside from they were already teleporting, Rudisborn is my best guess. But what kind of, like I said, Prism makes sense. Denise, her her proximity to Dariax was interesting to me. Like, if that had anything to do with it, due to the Crown Keeper's tangential relationship to Bell's Hells, or even just Opal with the Crown and Lolth and gods and everything. Like, is there anything that was going on at or around Dariax in that pivotal moment that
Mhm.
that's what she got sucked into, rather than it being specifically something about her?
Yeah, we didn't get much from her other than like I saw him like this always kind of bothers me in at like D&D tables where like things are omitted and the other players aren't like, well, where were you? Because she doesn't mention like the town she was in. She just meant like what was happening. Just like I saw him. So it's kind of like purposely vague, but it seems like we might get into their conversation later on where we get some of that context, or maybe they've purposely kept it out because maybe they're going to revisit the Crown Keepers again, for like another side story, and they're not quite sure where would they be or what would be happening. But I think you make an interesting point that she is so, what's the whole 6 degrees from Kevin Bacon, whatever.
Yeah, 6 degrees
um,
of separation.
yeah, yeah. Um, it is very interesting though that she is so closely. The connections are so short to get to connect the two of them together.
Yeah, and she did actually mention where she was, but I don't know if it was such like
Mm,
in conversation that I couldn't tell if it was just Amy like yes anding. You know what I mean by that?
yeah. Was it
Uh,
Amon?
no, it was Zephra, because
Oh, I thought she
Orem
was
like
just saying she had been there.
see that, so that's possible because it was such like in flow that it was hard to exactly determine her
Okay.
meaning. But like, I guess Orem said he was from Zephra, and she was like, "Yeah, that's where I was," because like implying
Okay.
that's where
Yeah.
Dariax was. But I don't have
Yeah.
like extreme confidence in that, like saying that, okay, yeah, she was definitely there, because it
Okay.
could be several different reasons why like it just came off that way, but maybe that's not
No,
really what she
that
meant.
does make more sense though, because I was thinking she was just making conversation on like places she's been, and that does track much better. Um, by the way, the two of them had an awesome conversation, and this is kind of what
Mhm.
I was trying to when I was fumbling earlier about Amy being at the table. The way she navigated the conversation with Orem, I thought just felt like there was some comment where she was like, um, about her being like secretly romantic or something. That Orem said something, and she was like, "Oh yeah, you are too. I can tell," or something.
Yeah.
It was just like a very sweet conversation, but also very witty and quick. Witty is maybe not the right word, but they played off each other very well, I
Yeah.
thought. Um, all that to say, yeah, I didn't put that together with Zephyra, but that makes more sense in hindsight.
Which
Which also, sorry, um, we know from the start of this campaign that were they left in Zephyra, or we know
sa-
Dariak stayed behind with Opal,
right.
but where were they?
Well, like a whole year had passed, and now even longer, with however long
Right.
the events of campaign 3 have been. But
I think Orm said a few months.
yeah, at the end of EXU Prime, they weren't in Zephra.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. I wonder why they would be there, especially since Orem is not there, like not with them. Like he's their connection to Zephra.
Well, I going back to episode 1, I can't remember if the phrasing was they all went to Zephyra. Keyleth sort of gave this mission to Orm and Fern. And then there's a specific data point where Matt basically says, Dariax has chosen to stay behind with Opal. So that would make sense, them being in Zephyra.
They just stayed
Um,
there.
yeah, if that's where they had originally gone.
Yeah. Well, we know they at least went, so it's at least, plausible. And
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's just as easy that they could have gone back for whatever reason. Maybe because they
Yeah.
knew, maybe they felt safe there because of Aurum and because the
Yeah.
Tempest, even though Keyleth's not there, but they maybe
Right.
wouldn't have known that. And yeah, I don't know. There's also the whole
Yeah.
aspect of the secret like residuum production there. So like maybe that for whatever reason is tied into whatever the Crown Keepers were doing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, so again, I don't even know if we can like take it to the bank that she actually was in Zephyra, but
I think with close surety we can. That you saying that checks the box for me. Um. Okay. So that's Denise. Bordor. This
Bordor, man.
seemingly seemingly well-to-do, well-meaning yet not proficient in battle character, sheep herder, who has seemingly developed magical affinity, an affinity of sorts. Let's talk about this because I think you said you're wondering how much
I don't know what's
is
going on.
authentic here.
I feel like there's several possibilities. Um, one, he just is a farmer and he's just having the worst day of his life, and just teleported here, has powers now for some reason, maybe Ruid is born or something like that. So there's basically option A is he's telling the truth and he is just kind of this. I don't
Mhm,
know what's happening to me. Option two is he's like it's an act,
mhm,
and I don't know what the purpose of that would be. I'm not saying he's like secretly a bad guy or like secretly like part of the Ruby Vanguard or something, but like
yeah.
it's an act for whatever reason, and he is way more in tune and capable than he's letting on. Um, but what's interesting is I think Aurum made it like a nat 20 insight check on something he said. I think it was that his powers were new.
Mhm.
Um, which it's at least possible that the man has a crazy deception and the nat 20 like wasn't enough, or it could just be that maybe the powers are new but he still is putting on an act and is not being earnest with who he actually
Yeah.
is.
I don't know if this was a Reddit comment, so I apologize for not attributing this because I don't remember if it was a Reddit comment or if it was actually someone in the show. But there was a comment made about, actually this would have been not in the show now in hindsight, but how this solstice, since it seems to be like loosing certain enchantments and things like that, like maybe Bordor had like latent magical energies that he or his family were unable to tap into until this moment has now occurred, and now like
Yeah.
this magical power has sort of been unleashed. And again, I'm sorry, I can't attribute that. It was like I was scanning, but I saw it and was like, ooh, I like that.
Like the elder on Namek like unlocking Gohan's potential.
I never saw it.
Oh,
Sorry.
you are such a liar. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Um yeah, so yeah, could be. And here's where we're going to the deep end with this third
There's a third
potential. There's
option.
a
All
third
right.
option.
I can always know when you Pepe Sylvia, it's going to be a good ride.
And this one stems from I don't know why, but his energy. So not even necessarily like the characters being
Uh,
necessarily too similar, but just like the energy of this character reminded me of another guest character from campaign 1. Um Lionel Gayhart, who was played by John Heder, Napoleon Dynamite. Um that
oh, that's
actor, yeah.
cool.
So he guested in campaign 1, and they just have like a similar kind of energy, and so I started thinking
Yeah.
about it, and without getting too in the weeds on it, Lionel Gayhart was this totem barbarian, and his like totem animal was a duck, and so there was this kind of like funny fan theory just because of how he acted and stuff that were like, is Lionel like a duck that was transformed into a human? And like that's like why his personality is so like the way it is. Um and so I'm wondering if Bordor is like a dog that was transformed into a human for some reason. Like his last name is Dogson, and he made a big to do
True.
about like my dad's not a dog. Like
Oh my
my
gosh,
dad's
I'm
not a
having
dog.
this. I'm having this moment. And what are great sheep herders?
Border
Dogs.
collies, specifically
That's right.
border collies, and his
Oh
name
my
is
gosh.
Bordor. That
Yes.
was my next point in the
All right,
Pepe
I'm all in on
Silva.
this. I'm all in on this. I love it. The light bulb just went off. This
Yeah,
is a
like,
great theory.
and he said his father raised sheep dogs,
Mm,
and so like border collies are sheep dogs. Like, I don't know. I know it's kind of off the
Border
wall,
dog son. This is nuts, dude. This is nuts enough to be true.
and then this is like the weakest. These are all kind of a stretch, but this is like the weakest point is the fact that his brother's sick and he's traveling to wherever the Pride's Inn or Pride's Call or something in Wildmount, and he has like his note written so he like doesn't forget or whatever. Like what adult human needs like a remind like
Bro.
and so it made me
Bro.
think of
Will.
Balto,
Balto.
the dog that had to go on like the
Yes.
mission to get the medicine. Like
Yes.
Bordor's trying to go get the
Yeah,
medicine for his
and
brother.
that time in 4th grade where everyone wanted to watch a movie and I chose Balto and everyone else chose Space Jam and I was the only one to watch Balto. When they turned it
Uh,
off, made me go watch Space Jam. So, it's a good movie though.
it's a good
Space Jam
movie.
sucked.
Space Jam's also good.
It is. But bro, the whole like knock on the directions, I know who I'm talking to.
No, I'm terrible at directions, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting. Interesting theory. Yeah, I was gonna say before you said that bombshell of a third theory, when you were going back and forth between the first two, I was thinking, well, I don't think he's being deceitful because um he seems earnest in. I think there was that great moment where like maybe it was Emily or someone was like, I want to insight check you, but since you willingly went prone in combat, I'm gonna assume that you're good. But interestingly enough, it would be crazy if it is option one, like, oh, I'm just a sheep herder, like, is sort of like this half truth, and he's just afraid to share, like, I used to be a dog. Notably, what do dogs do when they feel threatened? They go prone and don't hurt me,
And wet
and wet
themselves and
themselves. That's
vomit
right.
like he did too.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
So,
like I said, the whole Lionel thing, like that was just like a fan theory. So there isn't like precedent for like an animal being turned into
mhm.
a character. But I mean, it is D&D. I mean, we have things such as like true polymorph and stuff. So I mean, plus we have the craziness of the apogee solstice. There's definitely a lot of holes in it, but like I don't know, it's at least
No, I'm
something.
all about it. I'm
Um,
shipping this theory. I love it.
which yeah, I don't know. Like I don't know. I don't know why he would have powers. Like I don't know why he has spell
Well,
cast.
maybe he was a caster and got, like you said, polymorphed. His whole family got polymorphed into dogs or something, and he's back to his true form that maybe he hasn't ever, Skinny hasn't ever walked in before. Um, I don't know. Maybe his
Yeah,
family were powerful casters that made an enemy
like we're
of
cursed
someone.
or something.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. People can be werewolves. They can be, a flock of dogs. So, or as
true.
my wife did in our session last night with conjure animals, she conjured I don't know if it's called a flock, but we called them a flock of rabbits.
Hmm.
So, not very useful in combat, but
They all just die instantly.
mhm, pretty much. So, love the theory. I'm all about it. Anything else about Bordor before we move on to Prism?
uh, Let me just look really quick. Um, but yeah, last thing on him is just that I don't know what to make of it, but I do think that like speaking to his, you know, newish, I don't know, like inexperience, I guess, of like with
Mhm.
everything. I think that could be like
I
intentional
could see that.
character RP.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but it's hard to say if it is. So
Yeah. It
yeah,
definitely sells it better if he also out of character is a bit like, "Oh, yeah, which dice is it?"
yeah,
You know? So, moving on to Prism. Like we already mentioned, love Emily. She's great. Prism, who is this mage from the Cobalt Soul, out to collect survey responses. What was your what'd you make of her? What'd you think?
very very interested. Very, again, this is kind of like, well, and we didn't say this about Utkarsh's character, but obviously this is true for his character as well. I would love to just be behind the scenes during these conversations with Matt about like creating these characters, especially if he is a dog. But with Prism, it's cool that she's from the Shadowfell. I'm assuming she keeps using the word Shadow Realm, but
Right.
that
Right.
has to be what she's meaning, I would assume. Um, so interesting that that's where her character's from, and that she has this kind of deep connection to the Matron of Ravens, given the greater context of everything that's happening right now. So I think
And
there's,
another data point of the matron of ravens continuing to seemingly be a central figure in all this and everything that's happening.
yeah,
Not necessarily with her arc specifically, but I do think it's interesting that this keeps coming back to the forefront, this specific deity.
yeah.
So
So I'm curious to see what's going on there. Like, uh, the Shadowfell's not like a nice place, you know. So like when she says she's from there, obviously the Cobalt Soul like operates out of the Prime Material plane. I'm sure they have
yeah,
like, they
I
probably
thought
don't
it was
have like
like,
an office
I,
in the Shadowfell,
yeah,
but like
I
they
thought it was
probably
like
have.
I grew up there, but I've
Mm,
been working in wherever the Cobalt Soul is, Wildmount. I don't know.
yeah, so they've got like places everywhere.
Yeah, and then did you note the detail where they were asking her like why she was doing the survey, and she said like kind of offhand, basically the Cobalt Soul knew the Apogee Soul was going to happen, and the phrasing she used was they knew it was going to be cataclysmic, and so they wanted to get as much like information from people as possible. I just thought that was I don't know. It gave me like vibes of like when you see like a meteor movie and like you find out that like NASA knows the whole time that like everyone's doomed. I just thought the phrasing was really interesting. Like they knew it was going to be cataclysmic, not like a big deal, but like cataclysmic feels a little bit more negative than just like they knew it was going to be a big one. So I don't know. Did you pick up on that or am I forcing it?
I didn't pick up on that specific moment, but I'm trying to decide if I want to go into this because I think it was just me being confused, so I don't want to like needlessly complicate things. But I was just confused on why, like, and I guess it's possible she's lying, but I don't think that's the case. I think seemingly she is working for the Cobalt Soul and has been sent to do these surveys. Um, but I thought it was just weird that like that seems like such a, I don't know if trivial is the right word, but such like a mundane thing if you're expecting like cataclysm. Like
Mm.
how is that on the list of important things to take care of?
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, where I was confused is I originally thought that like the Cobalt Soul knew like everything that was going to happen and knew people were going to be teleported randomly, and she was there to survey on that. But
Yeah, I
then,
don't think so.
yeah, but then it was somebody in the Discord cleared it up to me and was like, no, she was teleporting somewhere to go do the survey, but then this craziness happened and she just ended up here, but like was still just doing what she was gonna be doing
Right.
wherever she was supposed to be going. And that parsed for me. Um, so then I was able to be like, okay, this makes sense again. But if she said the cataclysm comment, that throws it out of whack for me again.
Yeah, and maybe it could have also just been a slip of the tongue from Emily, just trying to say like, yeah, I knew it was going to be a big deal.
Yeah. I mean, it
So
is an apogee solstice, so like it is
right,
a big
right,
deal.
yeah, right,
But we do know that Bo from campaign 2 works for the Cobalt Soul, and she and Caleb were in deep, like they were there, like, so the Cobalt
Hmm.
Soul knew, at least to some extent, of the scary potential of what was happening, assuming Bo had kept them in the loop enough for them to know that. But at the
Who's
very least, they would have some inkling.
who's the leader of the Cobalt Soul?
I don't know if there is like a one above all as far as
Yeah.
that
Okay.
organization goes. I don't think there is, or if there is, they haven't really been
Yeah. Okay.
on
Interesting.
screen. Um, so yeah, my best guess would be that they just knew that one, it's an apogee solstice, and just in general, what that means, that there could be a lot of craziness going on. Two, maybe some of that being flavored by what Bo knew and told them. Um, but yeah, I don't know.
Hmm.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay. Um, what else about her character,
um,
or is there anything else?
I mean, basically what we've already said, but just how all those things work together. That
Hmm.
she's from the Shadowfell. There's this connection with the Matron of Ravens. Not like not a connection, like as in she's got a direct line to the matron, but just that
Mm.
the matron's involved with her at all in terms of backstory and whatever. Um, yeah, again, just the I can't think of a good word for it again, but the triviality of like being a survey taker, which could just be like it could have just been a bit like a funny, like this is how I'm
Yeah.
like this will be how I introduce, like this is what the
Yeah.
Cobalt Soul had me doing, and that might be it. But if there's anything deeper there to what's going on, but finally her spell book I thought was really cool, Denios, and it
Yeah.
being like this consciousness of
Yeah.
an ancient mage or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't really think there's been any precedent for that type of thing.
Yeah. I thought it was like a really cool, like stylistic, creative invention of just like the wizard's class of having their spell book. Um,
is it her from like is it her familiar because she can cast spells through it, or does that have something to do with like the awakened mind or whatever that she cast at the
you
beginning?
you can cast spells through your familiar. I don't think there's precedent for casting it through your spell book. Um,
Well, I mean, isn't the implication that it's like more than her spell book?
right. Yes, but I was just saying in general, mechanically, if it is just like the flare version of her spell book. Um,
So I'm looking up what manifest. Manifest mind at 6th level. You can conjure forth the mind of your awakened spellbook. As a bonus action, while the book's on your person, you can cause the mind to manifest as a tiny spectral object hovering above.
yeah, interesting. Yeah, I don't know. You guys in the comments, let us know because we're not sure.
Okay, whenever you cast a wizard spell on your turn, you can cast as if you were in the spectral mind's space. So that's why she was casting through it. So
Oh,
it's not functionally a familiar. So it was because of that
yeah,
spell. Okay, that makes sense.
yeah. How
um,
cool! What a smart player! Like in the moment to like mechanically be like, well, I'm thinking about when Orin got swallowed.
mhm,
Like how smart it was that she sends the spell book in, Dimension Door, boom, done.
yeah.
So, hmm,
Um, but yeah, I'm just curious again, maybe it's just really cool ideas and flavors on her part for
mhm,
the character of her spell book, but I'm just wondering if there's more to uncover
yeah,
there.
yeah. Are you going to move on from her?
Yeah.
I wanted to park on Ashton for a second. Ashton's conversation with Laudna, where Laudna's obviously having a tough time, and it's basically like, I think it was like, what if Imogen's like got blasted into space or something? And Ashton's like, all right, we'll go to space.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, what if she got vaporized? And she's like, well, we brought you back. We'll find a way. And I just loved his line, we don't leave anyone behind, which I thought was so. Sorry, you're gonna make fun of me. Ashton's one of my favorites. Just like this sweet character, ultimately, who has such like a genuine nature towards others. I think of like the beggar or the person passed out drunk in the first like few episodes where he told the party not to rob that person.
Yeah, we don't take copper.
Yeah. All this to say, Ashton, who was left by the nobodies, here he is several episodes later saying, like, we don't leave people behind. And
Yeah,
he's never showed that hurting him or deeply bothering him, but it made me wonder if there was a bit more trauma there that he hasn't fully shown about basically nearly dying and waking up to find nobody except for Milo. Um,
right.
so I don't know. I just loved that line, knowing what we know about him.
Yeah, for sure. 100% agree. I think it I think it definitely speaks to his character that, even though he hasn't shown those things, like that clearly is how he feels and that, traumatized him. Um, so yeah, I think he's even said something similar before about like making a big point about like we don't leave anyone behind.
Mhm.
So yeah, Talison's just he's good,
Yeah,
man.
yeah, it's great. Just a small detail from him. What else from this episode,
um,
or is there anything else?
we already talked about it, but in addition to like these people being teleported, um, I think it's just so weird that they also heard Ludinus's speech, um, which
Mm.
no one in no one on screen that we interacted with in Uthadern mentioned at all wanky teleportation or hearing this random speech. So again, we've already kind of like touched on the possibilities there, but I think that's very strange. Don't really know what to make of it. Oops, messed up our cameras, but we good. Um, Other than that, the only other thing really is they are in Asilra, which is where Vasselheim is, which the Critical Role show has been to before. But other than Vasselheim, we haven't spent too much time there. So I'm interested to see what they run into, where they go, and we know that Ludinus is at least presumably from Vasselheim, if his that's at least what he's told people. Um, so similarly to how Team Wildmount went to Malaismere and got some Ludinus lore, I could see this team heading to Ludinus's birthplace or home,
Mhm.
and maybe finding out more there. And then maybe the crews, meet back up with what they've each found, and there's some plan of action to be had. Otherwise, I don't really know what they're going to do in Asilra, which obviously the possibilities are endless, but that at least makes sense to me.
Yeah, I'd be curious how they would get on the plot line of going to his home place because like Molesmere was such a more prolific spot, um, and the group doesn't know that he's from originally Osilra. So I'm curious how that'll. I think you're right. I think it makes sense for them to go to that place. I'm just curious to see how it kind of pans out for them getting on that storyline.
Yeah. I mean, it could just coincidence, they're heading towards civilization, as it were. Could just be that that's where they end up, is wherever he's from. And maybe, like, just they find that out via talking to people. Um, but yeah, if it's not that clean cut and easy, I just imagine, you know, wherever they end up, they're going to go talk to authority figures there, and they could then find out, like, if they reveal that Ludinus did all this stuff, then maybe whoever they're talking to that's in the know here would be like, Ludinus, oh yeah, he's from around here, and maybe that would point them there or something.
Yeah.
I'm interested, and we're a ways away from this obviously, but I'm interested in how this group is going to get back, um how they're going to ultimately teleport. Maybe they won't, but
Yeah, I don't know. And maybe they find another teleportation staff. So, yeah, I don't know.
and Matt made some comment, I think, or there was some where they are in Isildra. They're far from Vasselheim. I'm pretty sure. Um,
Yeah, right.
but
'Cause someone asked if they could go there or how far away it was, and he was like, "No, you're a ways away."
yeah, so I don't think we'll go there, but that could also be kind of an end game
Mm,
for their arc is to get there, and then there's obviously, assuming the magic in the world works, there's definitely people there that could teleport
mhm,
them. Plus, it might
yeah,
just be an interesting place to, as like the heart of civilization, just get some answers maybe.
yeah. Okay. Well, lots to discuss, guys. Let us know what you guys thought in the comments and give us some of your theories and ideas. And join the Discord. We talk a lot about it down in the Discord. I guess the Discord's below us or something. It's down there in the Discord. Um, but yeah, anything else, Will?
No, I think that's it. Just a reminder, we got Candela Obscura tonight, and speaking of the Discord, we'll be chatting along in there as we're watching tonight. So please join us if you'd like to.
Yep. Okay. Thumbnail.
Thumbnail. I would say I know this is like generic, but maybe just like hyped or excited because we got
Yeah. You do another hyped one.
new characters
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Okay, sure.
All right.
I thought you were gonna. I was like, oh, we're doing props. All right. All right. Thank you guys for watching. I guess that's it.
Until next time, my friends.
See you later.